Welcome to a new edition of Feeding the World, MERCOSUR Business News. Today we have a fantastic episode ahead with someone I appreciate a lot, who's been a key referent for me in the dairy sector, but also in sustainability and in sustainability financing. He's got strong links with New Zealand, is a dairy farmer. He's also very experienced in multinational agribusiness companies. He's also a great human being, a keen surfer. So Charlie Herrera, thank you very much for being here with us.
Thanks very much for the invitation. A pleasure.
Real pleasure having you here. So to start with, tell me a little bit about the links with New Zealand, please.
Well, my parents flew in mid-60s to study, basically my father, and they lived 6 years. My sister was born there. So I always heard about New Zealand, and as an agronomist, New Zealand is a reference in all what refers to pasture management and dairying and so on.
Okay, so what did you learn from New Zealand throughout your life?
Well, apart from respect them from the point of view, rugby point of view, I very much like their philosophy. I had the chance to work there for some time in dairy farms and in farms too. And I think that they have an idiosyncrasy quite similar in some ways with Uruguay. And obviously too, the rural sector is very, have some points in common. And from the agronomy point of view, we have learned very much about them, especially in handling and managing pastures.
And you're a dairy farmer, and New Zealand and Uruguay are both pasture-based dairy countries. So what do we have in common, and why do I have this book in my hands?
Well, Grass to Milk from McMeekan is a reference book in what refers to pasture management, dairying based upon low-cost pastures. My parents started with the dairy farm in 1980, so it's 46 years of dairying. So I had part of my childhood there too. And the basis of this New Zealand philosophy stands on more feed, more pastures, quantity and quality pastures, controlled rotational grazing as a basis, and also improve enhance of genetics, in this case for milking. So I think that's very important, and it has been very seminal not only in Uruguay but also in the region. You can go South Chile or in parts of Argentina or in South Brazil, and this is the basis of what we're talking about of good management.
And today at your farm, so it is in Florida, right?
Yes, right.
And what sort of breeds do you have?
Well, we always had the Uruguayan Holstein, but we improve our herd with New Zealand genetics, especially aiming more mixed milk solids and some other characteristics, but mainly more milk solids.
And who do you sell your milk to?
Well, we form part of CONAPROLE, the National Dairy Farmer Cooperative, 46 years ago already. And I think that's another important issue for the Uruguayan whole dairy system, because it was born in 1936, but it has, supported all the range of small, medium, and big farmers, dairy farmers, and it's the main exporter. It's almost roughly 7% of farmers and more than 70% of exports of dairy from Uruguay. So it's a very important enterprise.
In terms of comparing CONAPROLE with Fonterra, for example, in New Zealand, do CONAPROLE set the price of milk that they pay you? Can you negotiate that? How does the commercials work?
Well, the international milk prices are set mainly by Fonterra, or a board where Fonterra is very important. So as usual in Uruguay, we take the prices that the world indicates now. But nevertheless, CONAPROLE has been a very good tool to buffer and help giving security to farmers mainly. Not only that, services, technical services, inputs for the farm, and so on. So I believe that was very important for Uruguay dairy.
And do dairy farmers buy their technology from Conaprole or Prolesa, their commercial branch, or do you secure it from distributors? Do you secure it from manufacturers? How do you go about making decisions around the technology and the inputs that you buy?
Well, in general, we choose, from the best players that can give services. It's true that Conaprole through Prolesa have a lot of services and inputs that we usually tend to buy there, but not only. You can choose from, the market has a lot of options, so usually people can have the choice there.
Okay, I could continue talking to you about dairy for a very long time. I've just been to Todo Lactia in Argentina. I work with New Zealand companies and Irish companies as well, who are very big in the dairy sector. But I want to discuss with you financing and sustainability. I know that you're working in this area. So tell me about how Uruguay is doing in terms of sustainability standards, particularly compared to the rest of the world.
Well, there's a lot to say. It's rather new, all this issue of climate change and sustainability and so on. I got passionate about that. Like 3 or 4 years ago, I started working together with some consultancy company because in our region, and not only in Uruguay, we are part of the bioma, Pampa bioma, where we have natural native pastures and good climate for raising cattle and so on. That's our history, basically. And there was a good opportunity to develop all the environmental issue, of course, with a lot of homework to be done and so on. So I got involved in these environmental projects, several, but mainly the carbon credit projects. There are several around here in Uruguay and the region. For livestock, it's rather new. It's more common in forestry. To achieve for farmers mainly a new environmental asset through the captation of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere through this miracle that is the photosynthesis through plants and pushing the carbon down to the soil. So that's a good opportunity for farmers that already are raising cattle, using mainly pastures, and with some other adjustments and considerations, animal welfare, community, and several things that the certification companies obviously want you to prove that you're doing that husbandry. There are a lot of areas, farmers and soils where we can achieve another income through environment. So that was one of the projects I was involved in, together with some others like tokens, incredibly, all this new world of crypto and so other. I'm involved with a company that has a platform where you can do a similar job, not so long time period, but you can do it quite quickly through crops, annual crops. You have to prove that it was managed with the sustainability, and that can mean that you can take the CO2 from the atmosphere too, and some of it stay in the soil, and that generates a token that eventually you can transform it in money. And I already had a test experience where I managed to take that through a 100-hectare wheat crop and to my bank account. So that's a reality today. I think the market still is a bit green, but I think we're going there.
I'm trying to understand this, from a perspective of somebody that's totally new to this. Maybe somebody that's listening to us and is not familiar with financial markets, particularly these sort of new markets. So basically, who would be interested in this? What sort of company would buy this package?
Well, that's a good question, because one of the things that's happening here, from my point of view, is that the primary markets, that is mostly the big companies or enterprises and so, are sort of waiting and see what they can do. Mainly companies that can't neutralize themselves because they have high emissions of greenhouse effect gases, so they can go and buy these credits, but not in any case. So the market's still, a bit shovels, and I think there's a long way to go. Especially what we have to sell is our way of producing, our way of keeping a good relationship with ecosystems, with biodiversity and so on, because they don't know us in the rest of the world, and mainly in the rest of the world. You like me saying that because that's a reality. I think that Uruguay has to show much more that we really are doing, and a long time ago. I think the environmental issue has still a long way to go.
So, for example, if I'm just thinking, if I were the CEO of an airline, maybe that's something I would like to invest in. Or maybe if I was the CEO of somebody that spends a lot of fuel, like a transport company or a shipping company, then I would like to offset my carbon footprint. Is that the sort of company that you're aiming for?
Yes, that mainly would be the primary market. There are others, secondary markets and so on, but that's a main market that today is taking this carbon credit and trying to neutralize their footprint. A lot of technological companies too. That is a reality today, but that needs to widen. Also, the proponents, it's important that the proponents can work fast, use new technology to shorten the processes, because there's a financial issue too. Sometimes the certifications take too long. I mean, you have to prove that you're really cleaning the atmosphere, but you have to show it. You have to get robust information, generate robust information. In our case, soil analysis, you have statistic issues, permanence, additivity, a series of concepts that are not easy to work, but it has to be done. And where still the new technologies, IA and satellite information and so on, are just starting to play. And that will help shorten all the processes. That's what happens with the platform, with the tokens. It's much easier because IA is very quick and can bring a lot of information together. And then it has to only be verified, and then they emit the tokens.
If I were a data center, I would quite like to do that.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah, so if you're looking for solutions to offset your carbon footprint, we're going to have some contact details for Charlie. And we need to round up. I can hear our production crew going like this in the background, and we know that it's time to close. And we're going to close, Charlie, with just a comment from you about someone who's very important in the world right now, who's Mr. Bill Gates. And he's linked to Uruguay somehow, and a lot of people in Uruguay don't know about this story. Hopefully we're going to have somebody who's going to discuss that with us at some point. That's a secret, and you're going to have to wait and see. But can you maybe give us a little teaser about the connection between Bill Gates and Uruguay?
I'll try. Basically, the story starts in 2022 when Bill Gates published in a blog that the humanity should have to stop eating meat because of the, climate change and so on, and this misconcept that is around cows and so on. And the former president of the National Meat Institute in Uruguay sent him a mail, explained that he would like him to come to Uruguay and see how we manage livestock and so on. Of course, there was no reply for some time. And the same man sent again a mail when he was now Minister of Agriculture in Uruguay. And finally, to make a long story short, he had a reply, and Bill Gates acceded to send the Gates Foundation to Uruguay to know the country, to learn about our methods and the way our livestock and our whole production here is working. And finally, in 2024, together with the National Research Institute of Uruguay. They started working together with Uruguay as an observatory to try to share and adapt these methodologies or the way of producing meat, basically, to other countries in Africa and Asia and so on. That's going on. That's very important. And I reckon that most of the Uruguayan people don't know that. And also it's important to show to the world what kind of services we can lead to.
Fantastic, and it's great having you here. I'm going to share some rum with you in a minute, but we'll just close this episode of Feeding the World, Mercosur Business News. I think there's a lot to share about Uruguay. There's a lot to share about dairy, sustainability, about financing. And Charlie's one of the sort of people that we need to have speaking to the world about the pros and cons of producing here and about financing and interacting between science, business, agronomics, the financial sector, marketing, communications. So thank you, Charlie, and I'll see you next time.
Oh, thanks very much. A pleasure. And I think...
Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.